Hey everyone, thank you for joining us for our Ignite Azure Scaling Show series. My name's Anna, I'll be your producer for this session. I'm an event planner for Reactor, joining you from Redmond, Washington. Before we start, I do have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional, and on topic. Keep an eye on that chat. We'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions for our presenters and hosts to answer. Our session is being recorded. It will be available to view on demand right here on the Reactor channel. With that, I'll turn it over to our host and presenter for the day. Thanks so much for joining.
Hello there, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. For anyone who is returning in our series and any of our new viewers. My name is Aaron Stark, and this episode is all about migration and modernization and the role that AI plays in there. I'm joined by two experts in this area for today, and I'll hand it over for them to do a little intro about themselves. Oren?
My name's Oren Thomas. I've written way too many books. I'm more of an infrastructure guy. I am someone who is generally looking at the side of people who actually have to care and feed for workloads. That is often the people that might need to make sure that they're backed up and running and just operating in the most efficient manner possible. Mike?
Yeah, so glad to be here. My name's Mike Weber. I lead our product marketing team when it comes to our app platform and dev tools suite. And a big focus of ours is around application modernization. And so excited to talk about some of the things that we announced at Ignite and some of the market trends that we're seeing and kind of diving deeper with Oren here. So excited to be here.
Absolutely. And I know I said that this is going to be about AI's role in migration modernization, but before we jump into all of that, would love to have you both kind of take us off on why modernization is a business priority and what challenges customers might face around there.
Yeah, sure. I'll jump in there and then would love Oren's thoughts on this as well. So I mean, we've been talking about modernization for some time now. It's nothing new. Both we see customers need to migrate and they need to modernize, but it's becoming an even more imperative for our customers to both migrate and modernize their applications. A recent study that we like to share is around $85 billion is lost yearly in productivity due to modernization projects being deferred. And so this really impacts our customers that are managing their application and infrastructure budgets. This impacts developers that we talk to, that they're looking to innovate and move on to the next fun and exciting apps that include AI and not be beholden to managing their old systems. And then innovation is just happening so fast, as we all know. With AI, we now have a lot of great opportunities in infusing AI into agentic tools that allow this to become more of a reality and easier for developers and our customers to do. The other thing with AI is that it's just becoming imperative that customers now move to get their applications AI ready so that they can take advantage of this next wave. If applications continue to stay legacy and not being updated to the latest frameworks and being able to take advantage of the latest advancements in cloud technology, we're seeing that they're just continue being further left behind. Another few quick data points I wanted to share, and then I would love to get Oren's thoughts on this as well. We're seeing that around 2/3 of CIOs are saying that they're spending new project spend. They're actually using that budget to still maintain legacy systems. So everyone the AI craze is pushing. Everyone knows that we need to be taking advantage of the new advancements in AI, but we're seeing that CIOs aren't able to use that budget that's been allocated for those new projects because they're still using that to maintain all of their legacy environment. And we see that almost half, about 40% of developers' time is still tied up in maintaining legacy applications. And so there's a huge opportunity to free up developers to focus on what they love to do, and that's to create new, exciting agentic applications and agents and let them not just focus their time on maintaining existing systems. So we've seen a huge influx just in this past year. We'll talk about some of the advancements that we have here, but would love, Oren, your thoughts on what you're seeing around migration and modernization, and why is it so important now? I mean, we've been talking about it for so long, but why now?
Well, I'm going to take a slightly different approach to the way that you have. And I come from operations, and operations tends to be very pragmatic. And that is that once I had a boss that said, I don't want to go and replace this thing that absolutely works unless I absolutely need to. So they're not necessarily thinking about all of the financial aspects. They're going, if you've got something that works, don't go and mess with it. But that's actually a key point in this whole modernization story. Because even when legacy code's been in production for decades, it can break because of the underlying changes in the environment in which it runs. And people don't think about this. Now, one of the really, really challenging things about older code, and anybody that's a developer knows this, is if you go back and look at code that you personally have written that might be 5 years old, sometimes it can be a real challenge to comprehend what you're looking at. So imagine going back and looking at the code that some bloke wrote 15 years ago or 10 years ago that's not you. So when you're thinking, oh my gosh, I've got this code base that's almost incomprehensible to me, and then if there's something that goes wrong with that, that becomes insanely difficult to remediate. So one of the other reasons, let's put the financial and the numbers aside, is that you want to make sure that if something that your business relies on breaks, you can get in there and fix it without becoming an insane problem. And I've got two props that are about this, and I absolutely recommend people read it. There's a book here called Overcomplicated by a bloke named Samuel Arbesman. And there's another one called Kill It With Fire by Marion Bellotti. And both of these are about the challenges that organizations have with legacy code and legacy systems. But Overcomplicated really deals with this idea that our code bases and our existing systems have become so insanely complicated that they're beyond human comprehension, which is why AI tools actually become useful. Because one of the things an AI has is an AI almost has an infinite concentration span. So when we're talking about AI tools, and one of the things that we'll go through in terms of the application modernization and also just understanding your existing ecosystem, is that you can go and use these tools to comprehend something in a way that might take you, if you were doing it in a rigorous manner personally, many weeks or many months to come to terms with. So one of the other elements of looking at the new tools that we've released is that they solve a problem of comprehensibility. That is, they allow you to comprehend the code base, in some cases, when you're looking at the GitHub Copilot app modernization story, which we'll get to in a moment, but also just the dependencies and the entire ecosystem of what you've got. There's a point that Arbesman makes in this book, and he talks about the IRS code base and all of the applications that exist in the IRS and how there's constant attempts to upgrade some of the older systems. And that simply because no one fully understands the functionality of this insanely complicated system, every time they try and upgrade it, they find that they miss bits of functionality that still remain necessary. So they get into this situation where they've introduced new applications that have new features and functionality that they need to do their job, but they don't take the whole cart across, and there ends up being these weird edge cases that they need to keep the old stuff around for. So another point in sort of this whole story is, how do you even comprehend what's going on with your code base? How can you shift the paradigm of your code base so that it becomes maintainable in future? How do you get it off that insane morass where someone looks at it and goes, I kind of understand what's going on here, but I wouldn't know where to start, and I'm very reluctant to start pulling off cogs and playing with gears because it might actually cause many more problems. And how do you move your code base to the point where it's easier to maintain?
Got it. I mean, that sounds like a really connected tissue to what Mike was talking about, especially around that one piece he had mentioned, about 40% of developers that spend their time in trying to maintain all these code bases, which really interesting point, because I would love to hear from both of you, maybe Mike to start, but what would you feel like Microsoft's agentic approach to modernization is, given a lot of the points that Oren made and some of the data that you shared previously?
Yeah, for sure. So we made some exciting announcements at Ignite. We made a few all the way back to last spring, which feels like years ago, but it was last spring at Microsoft Build, where we had some private preview features in GitHub Copilot. We call it App Modernization in GitHub Copilot, and so we use GitHub Copilot as our hero offering here when it comes to modernization projects. And so what we announced last spring at Build was it allows customers to quickly perform end-to-end code assessments. We ended up GAing this actually in September, and then we had some new stuff that came out here in just a few weeks ago at Ignite. With these AI agents, so we've taken an agentic approach to where within GitHub Copilot, you can use these AI agents to upgrade both Java and .NET versions. This allows you to make sure that your apps are cloud and AI ready. And then what we just announced at Ignite expanded this to where now we have end-to-end portfolio assessment with Azure Migrate, Dr. Migrate, and CAS. That's in public preview. We expanded the framework upgrades. So now what's available is .NET framework to the latest .NET all the way up to Java version 25. And then you can now do Jakarta transformation integration with IntelliJ. And then for containerization, we have a containerization assistant to help auto-generate Docker files. And then we announced a new offering around a managed instance on Azure App Service that allows you to accelerate to PaaS migration with just minimal configuration and code changes. And so we're really excited about this. We have some other announcements around Azure Copilot, where we have additional agents there. I'll let Oren talk about that. But maybe before we jump into that, we do have a short video that highlights some of these new features there. This is actual product that we're showing. It's just sped up so that we don't go through a 15 or 20 minute demo. But if we could maybe run that video, and then we can talk a little bit about Azure Copilot.
Sounds good. Slowly but surely.
So there was a lot to understand on what was going on in that video. But if you wanted to break it down, the GitHub Copilot app modernization, what it'll do is it'll go and analyze the current state of your project, and generate you a set of modernization plan. It'll go in and using artificial intelligence, it'll look at what you've got and it'll figure out what the dependencies are. It'll figure out what your outdated libraries are. It'll also figure out what your potential migration issues are and give you a set of strategies. What it'll also do is it'll assist with code transformation. It will suggest API replacements, dependency updates. It'll also go and use the existing knowledge that Microsoft and partners have figured out by doing this in the past. So one of the great things about AI is it sort of has a corpus of knowledge about everywhere where everybody stubbed their toe on problems in the past and how they've sort of got past that and are able to resolve that. So the system learns from existing changes and applies fixes. It also includes build validation. It will also create production pipelines. It will also do security vulnerability management, which will scan your code base and your dependencies for CVEs, automatically applying security fixes. So there's a lot there to look at in that video, and you have to watch it a few times to understand what's going on, but the documentation actually goes through in good detail all of the bits and pieces that this set of new tooling will provide for you.
I appreciate that, Oren.
Yeah, and just to add there, Oren, thanks for diving into that detail. Like we showed this video in a few different sessions at Ignite, and in two of the sessions, people did come up afterwards and asked, how does the tool actually work? Like that's great kind of vaporware that you were showing up there, and we had to reiterate to them like, no, that is the actual tool. We just sped it up, so it wasn't a 15-minute video. So that's something you can go access now. You can take advantage of that. You can use it in VS Code using GitHub Copilot. So that's actual real product, and you can go play around with it. So it's live.
And it's not a big press a big red button and it goes off and does it for you. You do all of the checks and balances. So it's not going to be like, oh, I've done that, and then it's sort of like an Uber Eats delivery where you've got no control over it after that. You can go in and you can pause, you can review, you can think about it. What it is that this isn't a tool to extend your capabilities. And this is what AI is really great at. Everybody sort of sat there and used AI to go and write themselves something. But what AI is really good at is if you've written something yourself, and take this from someone who writes a lot of books, you can go and get it to tech edit. You can go and get it to review it. You can go and get it to make suggestions. So when you've got an existing thing, that's where AI is really, 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 really useful, because it's saying, oh, you've got this existing code base. I know how to go and upgrade this code because I understand, I can see the entire context. I'm not generating code from whole cloth. I'm actually understanding your existing intent by what your code base does and where you want to go with it.
Yeah. And sorry, just one more thing to add on to that. I love that point, Oren, that you're making there. So we have a concept here that we call Agentic DevOps. We view it as the next evolution of DevOps for developers. And so app modernization is a piece of that. The point I wanted to make that Oren was stressing there was our point of view is that developers stay at the center of this. We have other agents within GitHub Copilot that developers can leverage in their every day-to-day tasks. But it is the developers at the center where they are there making, like you were there making the decisions. You were there validating things as they come through. It's not just going to go off and run and modernize your application, and then you still don't have an idea of what's going on. So our view is that developer stays at the center. We have multiple agents, and we'll continue to develop new agents for developers to take advantage of. And this is just one of an offering within Agentic DevOps where we focus on the app modernization piece.
And we've got a question in the chat there about, does it do databases? And if I remember correctly, not only will it modernize Postgres and SQL, it'll also do database migration. So I think one of the demos I saw at Ignite, but don't quote me on it, was moving Oracle to Postgres.
Yes. Yeah. And sorry, I'd forgotten to mention that before that video ran. So we did have some announcements around database modernization and migration, because an app doesn't operate without a modern database. And so we did unveil the next generation of Azure SQL Managed instance. And so that's now generally available. It doubles the storage. It's 5 times the performance for mission critical workloads. And then we also have it for PostgreSQL, which added Elastic clusters. It launched AI-powered tools to accelerate that Oracle to PostgreSQL migrations. and it's all integrated in GitHub Copilot. And so in that video, there was one little snippet on that, but yeah, I hadn't called that out before we showed that. So yes, databases is now covered as well.
Anything else that we want to add on databases for AppMod? Yeah, Copilot.
Not for me.
No, look, there's obviously, as Mike said, that there's many applications have that data layer, and so one of the things, and when we get more into talking about the Azure Migrate tool, it's about understanding the dependencies and the relationships between different workloads, and then you can understand how all of that works.
Awesome, and it looks like some of the other questions were answered in chat, but there was one from Steve Wolf 3214 just about if these tools can all run locally on a local code base, or is it only pertaining to GitHub?
So they can run that, from my understanding, they can run that in the CLI using GitHub using GitHub Copilot. So wherever you can run GitHub Copilot, you can access these capabilities.
Yeah, so you don't have to have a public repo or a private repo. You can basically run it against, and I believe you can also use it with other tools. You're not just limited to VS Code.
And there's another question from Husam Hilal. Apologies if I mispronounced that, but what's the best tool to use ADMS with, or VS Code, or SQL Management Studio?
I don't think it plugs into SQL Server Management Studio at this point in time. I know that we at Ignite they were talking about, I think they were talking about JetBrains, but don't quote me on that. But I know it was certainly in Visual Studio and VS Code and a few other editors.
Awesome. Okay. Without any other questions for now, we can continue here. But given we're talking about a bunch of these different tools, all the new tools that you went over, Mike, that has come out recently, and some things that are just GAing as well, what is kind of the overall thinking around the new tools that are in market, but any early successes that we've seen with customers so far based off of all the new things that have launched?
So one of the things that we haven't covered so far is probably talking about the Azure Migrate tool. And we've talked about how do you deal with your code base, but we've already got a tool that's called Azure Migrate, and we've added a whole lot of functionality to that, agentic functionality to that, to make that process of assessing your workloads and then moving them a whole lot better. So one of the new things that we announced at Ignite was essentially Azure Migrate Collector. And the idea behind Azure Migrate Collector is it's a discovery tool that you don't need outbound connectivity, but what it's going to do is it's going to actually go in and autonomously go and look at your workloads and figure out all of the dependencies and what is there. And what it really does is it's often extremely difficult to identify what the dependencies are for a particular workload. We sort of sit there sometimes and we go, well, we've got it in a VM. It must be fine. It must only exist in the VM. But if you really understand it, well, the VM's got a whole lot of dependencies. Not only is it dependent on DNS, because everything's dependent on DNS, but you will have a whole lot of, maybe there's authentication, there's different data elements. It may be talking to something else. It's running a function over here. It's running something else over here. So in the past, dependency analysis generally only provided you visibility at a single server. With this new tool, you're able to visualize network dependencies across servers. So what it's doing is it's analyzing network traffic, it's analyzing the applications. It's going in and looking at your ecosystem so that you're able to then understand what's going on in your environment. It also you can plug it into Azure, into GitHub Copilot, so it'll go and look at code if you've got code. But often a lot of organizations, especially when they're looking at stuff and they just want to do the migration aspect, they might not actually have the code for their application, but they want to move that application from on-prem to Azure. It might be an application that's sitting on IaaS. It might be or some other form of application. They want to move it to Azure, but they don't know the best way to go and do that. And it's not like they can go and refactor the code at this particular point in time. The other thing that these migration tools can now do is that they can look at the way that your application functions within its ecosystem and go and plan an Azure landing zone and configure an Azure landing zone when you're going to perform that migration. An Azure landing zone is a way of applying Azure best practices to your migration. So instead of just sort of picking it up and throwing it into the cloud and going, we're great, what it's actually going to do is it's going to make sure that you've got all of the right policy, the right configuration, the right security, the right network infrastructure for your environment. And what it'll do is it'll go and generate the necessary code and templates to go and apply that for you prior to you performing your migration. Something else that the new Agentic functionality in Azure Migrate does is wave planning. That's where it provides a structured approach to your cloud migration and modernization. It'll essentially break it down and allow you to prioritize and go, right, well, this dependency probably needs to be moved first. Once we've got this dependency, we're going to move on to this dependency. So it's about making sure that, if you go and build a complex Lego model, like some of the ones you see behind me, you've got to do it in a particular way. You can't just go, well, you know what I'd really like to work on is this part of the model. And that part of the model might be at page 50 where you really need to start at page 1. So it gives you much better planning, sequencing, and prioritization, and also gives you a whole lot of automation where automation can be actually done. So to come back to Aaron's question about some of the great examples of this, my favorite one is Xbox. Because Xbox, we obviously run an insanely large service at Microsoft for Xbox Live. And the Xbox team used GitHub Copilot to upgrade and test multiple projects for the Xbox Present services and was able to migrate it from .NET 6 to .NET 8 by automatically generating an upgrade plan that accounted for all dependencies, applying changes through a guided step-by-step commit process. The team accelerated the workflow and was able to achieve this migration 4 times faster than they would if they'd been doing it using older techniques.
Yeah, so we're definitely taking advantage of the tools here. And a lot of it is some of the new use cases that we're building is from our own teams. And the work that they need to do in modernizing our own applications is our capabilities that we're making available to customers. Maybe 2 other customers that I'd love to talk about. One is the Ford subsidiary in China, where they focus on using GitHub Copilot to automate that middleware of code migration tasks. This resulted, they saw up to about 70% reduction in the software migration effort. That helped them just accelerate timelines and it reduced the manual toil of actually going in there and doing that work. And then another new kind of fun, innovative company called NetView. NetView builds these GPT-enabled smart bird feeders. So a very niche product there. But they were able to, as they were migrating onto Azure, they leveraged these new capabilities and they were able to reduce about 67% of reduction in the manual effort to do that. And for them, this helped free up their engineers to focus on those new advanced AI features. So as you can imagine, having a GP-enabled smart bird feeder, there's a lot of fun and new opportunities that they could build into that product. And by them leveraging these capabilities, that allowed those same engineers to not focus on the manual toil of modernizing onto Azure or migrating onto Azure. It allowed them to focus on cool new features that they could build into that product. So those are 2 that we're seeing. We have a bunch of other customers that are taking advantage of these new capabilities, as well as other teams internally at Microsoft that are using them.
One of the really cool things about a lot of these tools is that for most organizations, they're not specialists in modernization or migration. So what you're getting by having access to these tools is sort of the collected wisdom that's been built into and trained into the AI, and that you can get that. So instead of going and engaging a consulting firm that might have done this 1,000 times, you're getting a sanity check from an AI that won't certainly be less expensive than the consulting firm, but what it's giving you is it's giving you a source of advice. One of the things that you always learn more of is having a dialogue with the AI. You can go and ask it questions. Oh, okay, so what happens if I did this? What happens if we do that? So all of this is built on the ability for you to get better access to information. Instead of sitting there in front of a search engine trying to figure out, okay, what do I do? Or when you run into a problem, how do I debug this particular roadblock that I've hit? You can go and use the AI tools to try and figure out your way forward with your migration of these workloads, because migration's really complex. If it was easy, you would have already gone and done it.
Yeah, for sure. And just one thing to add on there too. I mean, like hopefully people will be able to see that are watching this now or watching it in the future on demand, is that at Microsoft, we're a strong advocate and believer in the importance of migration and modernization. We've done the work to bring these tools together, as Oren was talking about with Azure Migrate. We have Azure Copilot that has these new agents that help do assessments and then help push that over into GitHub Copilot, to where then developers can pick that up from the IT teams and they can understand which apps need to be, or which apps are ready to be modernized. Then they can go and do that work with GitHub Copilot. So really that combination of Azure Copilot with GitHub Copilot makes this a real reality for our customers now, that as the video said earlier, what used to take months or even years now can take a few weeks in order to get your applications ready for AI.
Super exciting stuff. And I think we had a poll going around what our viewers are most excited about in the app modernization space, specifically with GitHub Copilot and Visual Studio for 2026. And the resounding answer seemed to be less manual effort and more innovation. But we'd love to hear from you two. What are you both most excited about as it relates to app modernization with GitHub Copilot, looking in the future for our partnership with GitHub as well as for Microsoft Azure platform?
Yeah. So I'll go first really quick, or I have a short one there. What I'm excited to see what customers are going to do with this. So like I love the NetView example, where they're creating really fun and engaging new experiences for their customers by taking advantage of this tooling. So I think in the era of AI, we're at the cusp of that, where there's some really cool things that have happened as far as new experiences and new applications that customers are developing. And I think this is just going to speed that up even more for our customers. So I'm excited to see what the next gen of apps that customers are going to build taking advantage of these capabilities.
And just to hit one of the questions that came up in the chat, yes, these tools do include building unit tests and functional tests for the migration. So it's not like cowabunga. What it actually is you can go and provide your whole tests. And what it'll do is it'll also create a separate branch on your repo so that you can go and do all of this mucking around against that, instead of just, deploying to production, because deploying to production always works so well all the time. No, you can go and do it in your test environment and use it in your test environment and figure out if it actually works. But what I'm excited about, to come back to Aaron's question, is that the challenge with all of this, as Arbesman points out, it's the complexity of these systems, right? We're dealing with systems that are increasingly becoming hyper complex. There's an old story about Steve Wozniak when they were building the Apple computers, and Steve Wozniak knew the entire code base of the operating system, and that's basically late 70s, early 80s. You spin forward to today, and you would need several thousand people in the room to understand the code base of an operating system for your desktop computer. We have, as things get more and more complicated, we don't know how they fail and we don't know how they interact. And luckily for us, we now have these tools that have almost an insane amount of concentration, right? They can't get distracted because someone posted something funny on Instagram. What they can do is that they can focus, and that you can go and talk to them, and then you can ask questions, and then you can follow up so that you really understand what's going on. Because everybody in IT knows that sometimes you're sitting there going, I'm desperate, I've hit a blocker, and I don't know what to do. And maybe you're sitting there trying to search through forums to find the answer to whatever your blocker is. And you're getting to the stage of being perhaps a bit religious, because you're praying that whatever you're going to try might actually work. But with these tools, you've actually got a better way of understanding how to resolve blockers, how to understand issues, and understand what the trade-offs around the workarounds are.
Well said. If there's no other questions for any of our viewers, continue to feel free to drop those. Would love to hear a little bit more on just maybe how our viewers, how customers, developers, anyone who might be new to this and or experienced could learn more and get more involved around Microsoft Agentic migration and modernization.
Yeah, so we have a couple AKA links that we'll either put in the chat here or they'll pop up here. So we have some great resources when it comes to just learning more and actually accessing these tools. So we can pop those up there. We also have a blog that we published out around Ignite that highlighted everything that was available when it came leading into Ignite, and then everything that we announced at Ignite around this. So that blog's a good read to understand all the different capabilities that are there. And then there's 2 different links that we can put in there around going and getting access directly to these tools and be able to use those.
And if you want to review the Ignite sessions, they're still up on the Ignite session website. Yeah. They're in video format. The ones that you want are BRK 103, and you also want BRK 139. And not only is the video there, but there is also all of the slides that are involved in those sessions that you can download for free without even having to register.
Yeah, I would just add one more in there. BRK 100 also has some great customer examples in there as well. We had some customers on stage. So yeah, plenty of content. We had about 6 sessions, I think, in total, or 7 around this topic at Ignite. But those are 3 of our favorites there. Or I guess not to say favorites, but those are great to check out. And just know there's even more that you can check out there as well.
And if you're not wanting to go through it 2-speed on the video, there are transcripts available as well that you can just read through.
Awesome. Well, thank you both. Couldn't have said it better myself. There are a plethora of resources that you guys can engage with. The blog, a lot of our on-demand content that's coming back from Ignite. But yeah, just want to do a very big thank you to both of our experts for joining us today. Thank you to the viewers who watched this episode. If you're part of the series, I'll see you in our next episode. And thank you for the team behind this that makes all this possible. So appreciate it. And until next time. Bye, guys.
All right.
Thank you all for joining, and thanks again to our speakers. This session is a part of a series. To register for future shows and watch past episodes on demand, you can follow the link on the screen or in the chat. We're always looking to improve our sessions and your experience. If you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear what you have to say. You can find that link on the screen or in the chat. And we'll see you at the next one.